Zimbabwe's $100 trillion bill. From economic collapse to eBay gold mine, Zimbabwe accidentally created one of the hottest money-making collectibles in the world by destroying their own economy. Welcome to Weird Geo Economy, the show where we dig into the most outrageous, unbelievable, and downright strange economic stories from around the world. And today, we're talking about Zimbabwe. Not for its wildlife, not for its diamonds, but because it gave birth to one of the most absurd pieces of currency ever printed, the $100 trillion bill. We're in Zimbabwe, a landlocked country in southern Africa that once held massive economic promise thanks to its agricultural wealth and natural resources. But beneath the beauty of Victoria Falls and the mineral-rich earth, Zimbabwe's economy was on a one-way ride to hyperinflation hell. In the late 2000s, the country's capital, Harare, became the epicenter of a financial nightmare where prices doubled almost daily and shops adjusted their prices every few hours. By 2008, Zimbabwe had entered the record books with one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in human history. And in the middle of this chaos, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe did what no other central bank had dared to do. It printed a $100 trillion note. Yes, with 14 zeros. Zimbabwe's economy collapsed after a series of catastrophic decisions, including controversial land reforms, corruption, and massive state spending without the revenue to back it up. The government responded the only way it knew how, by printing more money. This led to hyperinflation on a biblical scale. At its peak, the inflation rate reached 79.6 billion% month to month. A loaf of bread would cost billions of Zimbabwean dollars in the morning. To keep up with prices, the central bank kept printing larger and larger denominations. First millions, then billions, and finally, in 2009, the 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar note. But here's the twist. By the time people actually got their hands on the 100 trillion note, it was already worthless. Shops wouldn't take it, buses wouldn't accept it, and people needed wheelbarrows of cash just to buy groceries. It wasn't money, it was a punchline. So how did Zimbabwe reach this economic apocalypse? It started with land redistribution policies in the early 2000s, which stripped productive farms from white commercial farmers and handed them to politically connected allies, most of whom had no farming experience. That single move tanked agricultural output, destroyed exports, and gutted foreign currency reserves. Then came rampant government spending, sanctions, and complete mistrust in the central bank. With no tax revenue and massive debts, the government used the printing press to stay afloat. And every time they printed more money, the value of existing money dropped even further. It was a vicious, unstoppable spiral. By the time the $100 trillion note appeared, it was more of a political joke than a monetary instrument. But ironically, that very absurdity made it valuable. Later. Not in Zimbabwe, but on the internet. The man behind the chaos was Gideon Gono, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe from 2003 to 2013. He oversaw the printing of progressively larger bills and infamously claimed that inflation was being caused not by money printing, but by economic sabotage from the West. President Robert Mugabe, meanwhile, stayed in power throughout the crisis, blaming foreign powers and sanctions for the collapse, while inflation ran wild and basic goods vanished from stores. And then came a new group of people who saw an opportunity. Collectors. Across the world, from eBay flippers to numismatists, the $100 trillion note became a symbol of economic absurdity, a joke, a lesson, and a collector's item all in one. Weird Geo Economy, where we turn the strangest economic tales into unforgettable stories. At one point, Zimbabweans used actual food items, like sugar or cooking oil, as a more reliable form of currency than the Zimbabwean dollar. Cash was too unstable. Beans became a better store of value. The $100 trillion note now sells for $50 to $300 online, depending on its condition. It's more valuable as a novelty on eBay than it ever was in real life. After abandoning their own currency, Zimbabwe adopted a multi-currency system where US dollars, South African rand, and even Chinese yuan were accepted side by side. For years, Zimbabwe had no official national currency. Zimbabwe's $100 trillion note was never meant to be funny, but it became the ultimate meme of economic failure, a tragic symbol of how a government can erase the value of money overnight and accidentally mint a collector's item in the process. It's a lesson in economics, hubris, and human creativity, all printed in high-quality ink on a piece of paper no one could use, but everyone now wants to own. If you love wild stories like this, hit that subscribe button and keep watching.